My name is Evelyn Harper. I am 32 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I work as a high school literature teacher. For 5 years, I was married to a man who never once touched me like a husband should. Not out of cruelty, not out of violence, but out of indifference that was colder than hatred. My husband, Daniel Wright, was a celebrated trauma surgeon. Brilliant, disciplined, admired by everyone who knew him. He once told me, very calmly, that physical contact made him uncomfortable. He said it was a condition, a psychological barrier. I believed him. I believed love meant patience, and patience meant endurance. So I endured. 5 years of marriage. And the only time our lips ever met was when I leaned forward on my own wedding anniversary and kissed him first. He ran to the bathroom afterward and vomited. Later, he apologized and said it was a biological response, not a reflection of his feelings for me. I smiled and told him I understood. That was the first time something inside me cracked, quietly. For an entire year before everything ended, we lived apart. Daniel was transferred to a medical research institute in Edinburgh, working on an international surgical project. He said it would be temporary. 1 month, 2 at most. Weeks turned into a year. Messages went unanswered. Phone calls became rare. The only texts he replied to were about his parents. Or money. I stayed behind. I took care of his diabetic father. I took his mother to physical therapy after she fractured her hip. I cooked. I cleaned. I waited. Every time I felt lonely, I reminded myself that this was what a good wife did. She held the family together while the husband built a future. On our 5th wedding anniversary, I decided to surprise him. I traveled 493 miles, alone, through rain and exhaustion, carrying a bouquet of roses I had chosen myself. I told no one. I wanted to see his face when he realized I was there. I wanted to believe, just once, that I mattered enough to be missed. What I saw instead, standing outside the medical institute in the pouring rain, was my husband kneeling in front of another woman, gently removing her wet shoes with bare hands. His voice was soft. His smile was warm. It was a version of him I had never known. That was the moment I understood something terrifyingly clear. Daniel Wright was capable of tenderness. He had just never chosen to give it to me. And in that instant, soaked to the bone, holding flowers that no one wanted, I felt the last illusion of my marriage collapse. I did not cry when I followed Daniel inside the building. I told myself that tears would give meaning to something that did not deserve it. I walked behind him through glass corridors and white walls that smelled like disinfectant and ambition. People nodded at him. Some smiled. No one looked at me for more than a second. He walked fast, umbrella folded under one arm, not once offering it to me. Water dripped from my hair onto the floor, leaving a trail I could not erase. I held my wilted roses like evidence of a crime no one planned to investigate. The woman from outside walked beside him, close enough that their sleeves brushed. She did not flinch. Daniel did not flinch either. This was how I learned her name. Claire Morgan, British, senior researcher, former classmate. The kind of woman who spoke softly but never apologized for taking space. She smiled at Daniel when she talked, and he smiled back. Not the polite smile he gave waiters or colleagues, the real one, the one that softened his eyes. I had been married to this man for 5 years and had never seen that smile. At the conference room door, Claire turned to him and asked something in Spanish. He answered without hesitation. They both laughed. I understood every word. I had spent the last year secretly learning the language because Daniel once mentioned he liked how it sounded. He never noticed. He never asked why I suddenly listened to Spanish podcasts while cooking. He never cared enough to wonder. Claire glanced at me. Then she asked again, still in Spanish. "Who is she?" Daniel replied, still smiling. "My wife. From back home. From back home. Not my name. Not my presence. A location." The meeting started. I was told to wait outside, so I waited. I sat on a plastic chair in a hallway that hummed with fluorescent lights. I watched people come and go. I checked my phone. No messages. I checked the time. 1 hour passed. Then 2. The rain outside did not stop. My clothes dried stiff against my skin, leaving me cold and embarrassed. When the doors finally opened, No one acknowledged me. Someone asked Daniel if he was still single. Another joked about him and Claire being inseparable since medical school. Laughter followed. Daniel corrected them, casually, as if mentioning a detail about the weather. He said he was married. He gestured toward me. That was when people looked. Really looked. Surprise flickered across their faces. Discomfort. Curiosity. Someone said, "I am sorry. I did not know." Neither did I wanted to say. I did not know I had become invisible. We went to dinner afterward. A group of them. I was placed in the front passenger seat of a rented sedan while Daniel and Claire sat together in the back. They talked shop, research, grants, the future, all in Spanish. I stared out the window and counted traffic lights. I told myself this was temporary, that once we were alone, he would explain. He always explained. He always had reasons. At the restaurant, someone finally noticed I was shaking. A junior doctor offered his jacket. Daniel declined for me, saying I was fine. He said he would buy me something dry. He returned 15 minutes later with an expensive sweater that did not fit, too tight across the shoulders, too long in the sleeves. I forced it on anyway. When I came back inside, the table was empty. I checked my phone. It was Claire's birthday. Daniel had gone ahead. Room A 1701. I took the elevator up without thinking. I did not knock. The door was slightly open. I saw the flowers first. Lily of the valley. Fresh. Impossible to find in this season. Then the box. Velvet. Jewelry. Someone teased him about always knowing what Claire liked. Someone joked that he would find stars in the sky if she asked. I stepped back before anyone noticed me. That night, Daniel's apartment felt nothing like a home. It was spotless. Neutral. The only color came from a dream catcher hanging by the door. I recognized it immediately. Claire had given it to him. There were 2 pairs of slippers by the entrance. One was not mine. He cooked me noodles, asked if I liked the taste. He sounded polite. Distant, like a host making sure a guest was comfortable. I asked him about Claire. He told me the truth in fragments. They had dated for 8 years, almost married. She left to study abroad. He stayed. Timing was wrong. Life happened. He said it calmly. But his hand trembled when he spoke her name. That night, he held my hand for the first time without recoiling. I thought it meant something. Then he told me he was staying in Edinburgh permanently. I said okay. That surprised him. Later, his phone kept lighting up. He said Claire was afraid of storms, that he would go check on her, that he would be back soon. He did not come back. I booked the earliest flight home, folded the clothes he bought me, left the watch I had saved for 5 years to buy. I wrote a note. Short, clean, final. When the plane took off, I removed my wedding ring and dropped it into the airport trash. By the time I landed, I was already someone else. And the woman who had waited 5 years for love no longer existed. I thought distance would make things clear. I was wrong. Distance gave Daniel room to rewrite reality, and for a while, I let him. When I returned to Portland, everything looked the same. The narrow streets lined with maple trees. The small apartment we had shared. The bookshelf he insisted on organizing by height instead of genre. Familiar spaces should have comforted me. Instead, they felt staged, like sets from a life that had already wrapped filming. Daniel called 3 days after I landed. His voice was calm, controlled, almost gentle. He asked if I was rested, if the flight was smooth. He did not ask why I left without saying goodbye. He said Edinburgh had been stressful, that I had arrived at a bad time, that Claire had needed support because of a grant review and a sudden illness in her family. He said I had misunderstood what I saw. He said I always jumped to conclusions when I felt insecure. I apologized without realizing I was doing it. That became the pattern. Every conversation ended with me questioning my memory, my tone, my reactions. He said I was emotional lately. He said long distance made me paranoid. He said marriage was about trust, and I was failing at it. When I asked why he stayed overnight at Claire Place, he laughed softly and said I was imagining things. He said he slept on the couch. He said nothing happened. He said physical closeness still made him uncomfortable, and how could I even think otherwise? I wanted to believe him. Belief felt easier than grief. Weeks passed, then months. He stopped calling regularly. He said his schedule was unpredictable. When I suggested visiting again, he said it was not a good time. When I asked when it would be, he said I was pressuring him. When I reminded him that we were married, he said marriage did not mean ownership. One evening, his mother called me in tears. She said Daniel was exhausted, that he was sacrificing everything for his work, that I needed to be more supportive instead of adding stress. I listened. I reassured her. I sent money for his father medication without being asked. Daniel thanked me later, briefly. He said Claire had helped him pick up the prescription. That was the first time her name slipped into our marriage without apology. I started waking up with tightness in my chest. At work, I lost my place while lecturing. My students noticed. I forgot words I had taught for years. At night, I replayed conversations in my head, searching for where I had gone wrong. I checked his social media, something I had never done before. He rarely posted, but Claire did. Photos of conference dinners, group selfies. Daniel always stood close, always smiling, always relaxed. In one photo, his hand rested on the back of her chair. A colleague commented, "Power couple." Claire liked it. I confronted Daniel carefully. I told him how it made me feel. I said I felt replaced. He said I was projecting my insecurities onto his career. He said Claire was a colleague, nothing more. He said if I kept accusing him, I would push him away. That sentence lodged itself inside me like a threat. So I stopped asking questions. That was when the truth began leaking through the cracks. A package arrived one afternoon, addressed to Daniel, but sent to our old apartment. I recognized the handwriting, Claire. Inside was a scarf, soft, expensive, the kind you give someone you touch often. Tucked inside was a note, short, intimate. For when you miss me, Ketnan. My hands shook as I folded it back into the box. I did not call Daniel. I waited. 2 days later, he called to ask if anything had arrived for him. I said no. He thanked me and hung up. That night, Claire posted a photo. The scarf was around her neck, Daniel's shoulder visible in the corner. Something in me went quiet. I contacted a lawyer the next morning, just to ask questions. I told myself it was informational. I told myself I was not ready to make decisions. The lawyer asked when Daniel last contributed to shared expenses, when he last visited, whether there were witnesses to emotional abandonment. I had answers for all of it. That realization felt heavier than betrayal. The final blow came in the form of an email, not meant for me. Daniel sent it by mistake. Or maybe part of him wanted me to see it. It was addressed to Claire. He wrote about how easy life felt with her, how he never had to explain himself, how being with me felt like obligation, how marriage had been a mistake he made out of fear of being alone. He ended it with a sentence I will never forget. "I wish I had chosen you first." I did not respond. I did not forward it. I did not scream or cry. I printed it, filed it, and for the first time in years, I stopped trying to save something that was already dead. That night, I slept without waiting for my phone to light up. And in the silence, something else began to grow. Clarity. I did not announce my decisions. I learned that silence, when chosen, is power. I stopped answering Daniel calls. I did not block him. I let them ring. Let him wonder if the distance he created had finally become permanent. I replied to emails only when necessary, short and factual, like correspondence between strangers who once shared an address. I gathered documents at night, bank statements, medical insurance forms, tax returns, receipts, 5 years of shared life reduced to folders and timestamps. I discovered how much I had covered while he was gone. Rent, utilities, student loans he never finished paying, transfers marked temporary that were never returned. I stopped feeling foolish and started feeling precise. The lawyer called me efficient. She said emotional abandonment was easier to prove than people thought. She said patterns mattered more than moments. She said I had been carrying the marriage alone for a long time. I asked her what would happen if I filed first. She told me control often belonged to whoever stopped waiting. Daniel finally noticed when the money stopped moving. He asked why the joint account was untouched. He said there had been a mistake. He said he needed funds for travel. I told him to use his personal account. I told him my expenses were no longer shared. He accused me of being petty. I did not respond. Claire sent me a message 2 days later. Polite. Measured. She said she wanted to clear the air. She said there had been misunderstandings. She said Daniel was fragile and under pressure. I read it once. Then I archived it. The next week, Daniel's mother called again. This time her voice carried something new. Worry. She asked if everything was all right between us. She said Daniel had been irritable, that he seemed lost. I told her the truth without cruelty. I said her son had made choices I could not carry anymore. I said I was stepping back. She did not argue. She only sighed. That silence felt heavier than accusation. The turning point came quietly. I received a notification from my airline app. A reservation had been changed. A return flight from Edinburgh to Portland. Daniel name. 2 seats. He had not told me. I waited until the plane landed. Then I filed. Divorce papers were served at the institute, in front of colleagues who had never known I existed beyond a vague reference. The timing was not revenge. It was accuracy. That was where he had built a life without me. That was where it needed to be acknowledged. He called that night, again and again. When I answered, he sounded panicked. He said I was overreacting. He said this could have been handled privately. He said Claire meant nothing. I told him I had read the email. Silence followed, not the thoughtful kind, the exposed kind. He said he did not mean it the way it sounded. He said people say things when they are confused. He said he loved me in his own way. I told him love that requires disappearance is not love. He asked if there was someone else. I laughed. It surprised both of us. I said no. I said there was finally me. 2 weeks later, Claire blocked me. Daniel sent a long message about regret and history and starting over. I did not finish reading it. I packed the last of his things into boxes and scheduled a pickup. I kept nothing sentimental, only the documents. The day the boxes left, the apartment felt larger, not empty, clearer. That evening, I received an email from the institute. Administrative. Neutral. They requested confirmation regarding marital status for insurance records. They mentioned discrepancies. I forwarded it to my lawyer. I slept deeply that night. In the morning, a final message arrived from Daniel. He said he had never imagined life without me. He said he felt unmoored. He asked if I would reconsider. I stared at the screen, calm in a way I had never known. I typed one sentence. I already have. And as I pressed send, I realized something else was ending too. The version of him that had depended on my silence, and he had no idea what losing that would cost him next. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning. No courtroom drama, no raised voices, just signatures, dates, and the quiet closing of a chapter that had already ended long before the paperwork caught up. Daniel did not contest it. He tried, briefly, to negotiate details that no longer mattered. Sentimental items, shared memories disguised as property. I let my lawyer handle everything. Distance had taught me that clarity does not require confrontation. Claire never contacted me again. I heard about them through fragments. A colleague who taught abroad, a mutual acquaintance who meant well. Daniel's performance at work declined. Grant stalled. The institute reassigned him to a lesser role. Nothing catastrophic, just small, cumulative losses that came from being unmoored. For the first time, his consequences did not require my presence. I moved apartments, not far, just far enough. A place with large windows and morning light. I left behind furniture that carried weight. I kept books, plants, things that grew. At school, my students noticed the change before I did. They said my voice sounded steadier, that my lectures felt alive again. One of them asked if I had written the poems we were reading. I laughed genuinely and realized how long it had been since laughter came without effort. Daniel wrote once more, a letter, this time, long, careful, full of insight he had never offered when it mattered. He said he was learning, that he finally understood what he lost. I did not respond, not because I was angry, but because understanding arrived too late to require acknowledgement. I stopped measuring my healing by how little he affected me. Some days, memories still surfaced, certain streets, certain songs, but they no longer asked anything of me. They passed through like weather. I began traveling alone, short trips at first, then longer ones. I stood on unfamiliar streets and felt no need to explain myself to anyone. I learned how light it felt to make decisions without accounting for someone else's absence. People asked if I would marry again. I said I did not know. And for once, not knowing felt honest instead of frightening. The greatest shift was quiet. It happened the morning I woke up and realized I was not bracing for anything. No incoming message, no emotional recalibration, no preparation for disappointment, just space. I used to believe endurance was love, that staying proved devotion, that patience would eventually be rewarded. I was wrong. Love does not require disappearance. It does not ask you to shrink so someone else can feel comfortable. It does not punish you for wanting to be seen. I did not lose my marriage. I outgrew it. And the woman who once waited in hallways, counted traffic lights, and apologized for existing no longer lives here. In her place stands someone else, someone who chose herself. Finally,